Good afternoon, writers. Welcome back. Today we're going to work on our history paragraph, and our objective is students will write main events in sequential order using transition words to connect ideas. So we want to think about, when we're talking about the history of our state, that we are making sure we are putting things in order. Well, what does it mean to sequence? Sequence means to put the events in order from beginning to end. This is important because it helps readers understand what happened first and how your state has evolved throughout the years. So you might hear another word called chronological. That's just same. It's a synonym, meaning the same as sequence. So can you put the following events in chronological order? So we're going to take a look at a few sentences here together, and we're going to see if we can figure out the beginning, which sentence would come first. So for instance, I have mixed up all of these sentences, and let's take a moment. I'm going to read them aloud, and maybe if you want to have a piece of paper handy or a whiteboard, something that you can kind of try and see which ones might go first. So I have lastly, Illinois became a state in 1818. The history of Illinois includes Native Americans and settlers. Later, French settlements were built there. Then, French explorers first visited Illinois in 1673, and around AD 700, Native Americans started a community near present-day Cahokia. Well, I'm going to think about the structure of my paragraphs, and I know that I always need to start with a topic sentence. Which one of these might sound like a topic sentence to introduce a history paragraph? Well, to me, the history of Illinois includes Native Americans and settlers. It's giving me a general overview of what the rest of the paragraph, or what the paragraph would be about. So let's see if I can move that over here. All right. Lastly, Illinois became a state in 1818. That is a really big clue to me, having that transition word lastly, that this is probably going to be our last bullet point. So I might want to just kind of transition this down there already. Oh, looks like my box didn't go with it. That's okay. The history of Illinois includes Native Americans and settlers. I'm now going to start looking at some years here. Well, in AD 700, and then I've got 1673, I believe that this one would come first, right? Because of the AD 700. So this one would make sense to go after. Oh, lost my box there again too. All right, so then we have around AD 700, Native Americans started building a community near present-day Cahokia. I'm going to see, then French explorers visited Illinois in 1673. That tells me, because of that word then, that this might be a good place to put this fact here. Later, French settlements were built there. And lastly, Illinois became a state in 1818. I'm going to read this all through one more time, and let's see if this makes sense. And what is it that you notice? The history of Illinois includes Native Americans and settlers. Around AD 700, Native Americans started a community near present-day Cahokia. Then French explorers first visited Illinois in 1673. Later, French settlements were built there. Lastly, Illinois became a state in 1818. What was really helpful for me was not only the dates, but also these transition words. Then, later, lastly. It made the writing sound more connected, and it was able for the reader to easily tell the order in which things happened. So we're going to try this out into our own writing for our history paragraph. What I'd like you to make sure that you have handy is your history note taker, as you see here. So if I just share with you my screen and how these are my history notes, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 different boxes that I used. And if you notice, I numbered them. This helped me make sure that I was knowing which ones went in order, so that I can easily transition this into writing. So I'm going to show you, and you also are going to have access to this on the fourth grade website, a transition word bank. This was super helpful for me as I was writing my history paragraph, which I'll show you in just a minute, to give me a variety of ways to use transition words to connect my ideas. So if you notice, this one says words or phrases to help sequence ideas or transitions between sentences. So you can take a look. We've got afterwards, as soon as, in the meantime, meanwhile, later. We also have words that show time. Some of them you might see in both places, and that's okay. When, suddenly, so notice that maybe you can try out some new ones today. Furthermore, in addition, if you want to indicate more information, showing location, and these are kind of helping conclude a piece of writing, which we won't necessarily use these today. Not to say that you can't, but just know that this is an option for you to reference in case you're kind of struggling to see which words you can use. I'm going to, as you're going to be doing the same, what you're going to do is you're going to go into having your notes handy and next to you. You're going to go into your writing template, your writing document, and you're going to scroll all the way down until you find history. So I have mine typed in here, and we're going to kind of read through my history, and I want you to see what this kind of sounds like and how I organized my writing. Again, you might notice just even by glancing at it, I have it broken up into sections. I also want you to pay attention to which transition words were used. Illinois has taken a long journey to get where it is today. French explorers were one of the first people to come to Illinois. Jacques Marquette and Louis Joliet were sent to find and trace the Mississippi River. The rivers and lakes were very important to Illinois for fur trading. For instance, furs were taken down the Illinois River, loaded on a ship, and then taken to Europe to sell. So if you notice, what kind of transition words did I use here? Okay, I kind of used one to state an example. Okay, and if you notice my topic sentence, I introduced what I'm going to be talking about, the journey to Illinois becoming a state. Notice how I transitioned to my next part, which my first part mentioned early settlers, and now let's see the topic of our next paragraph. Before long, many more settlers were arriving in Illinois, taking land from the indigenous or native people who inhabited the area. This angered the native people, and when a war was declared on Great Britain in 1812, the native tribes sided with the British. This led to a bloody attack at Fort Dearborn, killing many Native Americans. A few years later, the great state of Illinois became the 21st state on December 3rd, 1818. You might notice that I bolded this word indigenous because that would be maybe a word I'd want to use in my glossary and have be pointed out because this is a new content word. If you notice, I put specific years in. So again, I'm going from 1812 to 1818. So I'm going in sequential order. I also want you to notice that I also used a few years later to transition my thoughts. Later, in the 1840s and 1850s, many immigrants began coming to Illinois before the Civil War, looking for work. Illinois offered different opportunities for people to work in the Illinois and Michigan Canal, as well as farms, railroads, factories, and mines. During this time, the career of Abraham Lincoln, one of Illinois' most well-known and loved residents, began in politics and strongly debated the issue of slavery. He became the 16th president of the United States in 1861. Notice that I'm going from moving along the 1800s. Notice I mentioned another person that was important to my state. I also started with later during this time. Okay. And my last section has to do with after the Civil War and what happened. After the Civil War, Illinois grew greatly, specifically on railroad construction, factories, forges, and mills. Chicago had the largest meatpacking and grain industries in the United States at that time. In 1871, the Great Chicago Fire destroyed much of the city, leaving 100,000 people homeless. Despite some challenges Illinois faced along the way, it has overcome those obstacles and grown to be a thriving place to live. All right. Notice I have a concluding sentence, kind of wrapping up my history paragraph. How do I want to end it without just leaving my writers or my readers wondering what happened? I could have gone into something further on down the road, but I felt like I traveled enough in time to give my readers enough history to see how Illinois has developed in its history. So again, please feel free to come back, take a look at this history paragraph. And what we'd like to see you try is trying out using some of those transition words and phrases, and also making sure you are putting your information in sequential order. All right, writers. And just note that this organizer again is linked on your on your fourth grade curriculum website. All right, writers, we look forward to seeing the excellent writing you'll come up with.